Wait. So,
Hey, good morning.
hi. I'm not Natalie Paul, it's my wife, but I use always her Zoom. I don't know, her name pops up.
Hey, no problem. I have the same thing with half of the accounts that I use to log into Zoom. Before we start, you're cool if this is recorded, right? Because this is for a print publication, and I don't believe in trying to take notes and paraphrase people at all. So, just at the start, the way this is going to work is we'll just kind of have a free form discussion. I've got a couple of questions written, and then the final print of what will actually be published in this scene, I'll send to you, of course, so that you can approve it and you make any notes if you have anything that you don't want in there, etc. You're
Perfect.
in full control. Just as a short little bit of background, my name's Justin. I'm in New York City. I'm part of a collective that started and I'm not sure how much background or familiarity you have with the concept of network states or the tech funding folks that want to essentially create their own little autonomous countries. We created a parodical one. So we created a sort of satirical network state. We published a magazine in competition with one of the ones that legitimately is trying to do this sort of thing. It's sold out. We sold like 200 or 300 copies. Nothing big, not like huge distribution, but we're doing a continued run of this where we basically uh, the purpose of our zine is just to talk about digital culture and the intersection of I think of like online and offline culture. The reason why we reached out to you specifically is because every single one of our current members are I would say disenfranchised with the state of like film and TV and culture, etc. And my friends and I have been following you for ages, since we were in high school and first discovered like your video game adaptations. And our claim is that I think in general that Hollywood seems to rebuke you because you hold up a mirror to itself that I think is inconvenient for them. And a lot of your critique is completely in line with I think a lot of what we see, at least in the promulgation of like an infinite amount of low quality cash grabby slop, especially from major studios that continuously sort of fund the same ideas, pick up old IPs, reboot them. The movies either do well or don't, and we're kind of in this state of cultural stagnation. But before I get too much of a tangent on that, super excited to have you, Uwe. I'm really excited to just talk with you and hear some of your ideas and especially in relation to what you're working on right now and just sort of like your views of the state of the industry, especially in things that may affect it, like the increase of let's say like AI tooling and the now claims from like the sort of hubristic tech folks that filmmaking is over, so to say, which I again disagree with. But yeah, super excited to have you. Really, really pumped that you'd agree to do this. And yeah.
Yeah, then push record.
All right, let's see. Let me make sure that we're actually recording. Oh yeah, so we are recording right now.
Okay, good, perfect.
Yeah, so let me just pull up my notes here. So I think the first question I have for you is in recent years, we've sort of seen what people in like the cultural critique sphere describe as the fragmentation of attention. With the rise of so much content hitting online, audiences have shorter and shorter attention spans. And now, as you could see from scrolling through Instagram at any given moment, are inundated with an endless supply of what people call brain rot or just low quality video content. Do you feel like this has affected you at all as a filmmaker or your habits when it comes to producing, directing, and screenwriting films? Or do you see this as sort of irrelevant to your craft?
I think yes and no, right? So I kind of refuse to accept that, but I see it with my own younger adult kids, right? So they are only watching videos on TikTok or Instagram and YouTube. And I mean, YouTube shows also all the TikTok videos. It's like cross, right? So, but the attention span of the younger generation is shrinking. I will not forget when I was with my son in Jumanji, the last Jumanji
Hmm.
movie, and they were both like, "That's too long. Let's go." And I was interested to how that movie ends, and I think it was actually a good, entertaining movie, and they don't have it in them anymore. So that's the one thing. The other thing is also that all the big streamers they insist and they feed every script what comes into the algorithm they use.
Hmm.
So if you don't start with a bang or a big surprise, you're basically out of the game. From time to time they produce this kind of okay, Richard Linklater makes a film, or like Wes Anderson, so they can do their thing because their reputation, and then like we're in the Wes Anderson financing, whatever. But the reality is, if you want just, let's say, you're not one of these art house Venice, Berlin winners, then you need to start with a furious, crazy beginning exactly for that reason,
Hmm.
because the younger crowd will switch everything off. They start watching something, and if there are two guys that whatever talking at the gas station, after 2 months, 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I would say 50% of the people are out. And that's a huge problem. And I think that's the real problem of social media interfering with streaming, and streaming at the same time is kind of social media. Everything is now online, so on your cell phone basically. And I think you remember when Jeffrey Katzenberg opened this Quibi or whatever it was, this company what made only 10 minutes long movies. I
Hmm.
mean, he was dead on, but he was 5 years too early.
Yeah.
Now it would totally work. And in that time where he started it, I don't know, it was 5, 6, or 7 years ago, they were just not there where they are now. And so they died because everybody felt like, I'm not paying money also for 10 minutes long films.
Hmm.
know,
Yeah,
and they would
exactly.
still not pay for it. So if you come in with that new idea of 10 minutes long films on the channel, it still has to be paid by advertising or whatever. It will nobody will pay for it. So, but yeah, I mean, we live. I think the question you ask is very important, because I think everything is changing. And I had a discussion yesterday on a German podcast with a guy where we just said, look at the how films were told 20 or 30 years ago,
Hmm.
and the movies, like that's the reason. Like when you see the Oscar winners in today's time, and then you see whatever Goodwill Hunting or Rain Man or Godfather or Apocalypse Now, and all that movies who are like 20, 30 years old, you had like every year like 10 phenomenal movies,
Hmm. Yeah.
where you say like, wow, I love that film. And that is completely gone. Now you have whatever you watch. I think that the maximum you got out of me in excitement was normally like, okay, that was a good movie, but not like, oh my God, it changed my life. That effect, I think the last movie where I had this kind of wow was There Will Be Blood with Daniel Day Lewis.
Hmm.
That was maybe the last movie really where I had that feeling like, "Boah,
Yeah.
that's like brutally different, engaging." So, and there were a lot of good movies, but I mean, I think Everything Everywhere All at Once was the perfect example where we stand. That was a TikTok video, what never ended.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, that was actually, I think I watched that film with my wife, who is like primarily very offline, like does not like scroll like social media all that often. And she complained that she was like, it felt like the movie was designed to be captured in short clips to be reposted to social media, which I think is sort of the meta of a lot of the but both sides of the industry, like the big studios, like the Walt Disney Company and the reboots of the movies that they're making are just really intended to be captured and redisplayed in some other sort of meme format. And then on the other hand, you have production houses which are really just thinly veiled, finance capital firms like A24 that are making films that are meant to either be absorbed into discourse on social media, like Alex Garland's Civil War, or just to provide fan service to an existing community that they can lock in to actually watch the film, which is why Garland is producing the next Elden Ring or the Elden Ring adaptation, which is a video game adaptation that he's been drafted to
Okay.
do. So, on that subject, I do have a question for you, based on your long-running history of adapting video games into films. Are there any existing video games which you believe have not been adapted into films yet, which you would like to see adapted into films, or do you believe that this is primarily a tapped market?
I mean, I was in a way the front runner and did a lot of them 20 years ago, basically.
Yeah,
And now it's every day a new one. So House of the Dead gets a new movie from Sony. Then yesterday I read that Far Cry gets turned into a TV series. Now, when you said Elden Ring, I think I had the rights on Baldur's Gate for a small time period, but I lost it. I had a Fear Effect from Eidos, and I couldn't make the movie. Um, but I'm not actively looking into it anymore. What I would love to do is to do a House of the Dead movie
hmm
parallel to the new House of the Dead movie with my old cast.
Oh, that's
You
interesting.
know, like
Yeah.
doing like a movie like David against Goliath. Like, it's this kind of, we make a real, where all the effects are real, no computer effects, no AI involved, and doing like basically a homage to the old days of slasher, zombie, campy, like Halloween party movies, like what I think House of the Dead one was, and I think the first disappointment on House of the Dead in the year was they were expecting a very scary, hard House of the Dead. Then they got something more campy. They were very disappointed about it. But then over the years, I think it turned into a lot of a cult movie, because wherever I go and talk to like horror podcasts, video game podcasts, they all have this kind. There was a shitty movie, but I watched it 10 times. So I mean, then can be a movie so bad if it's 20 years later still getting watched all the time? And so that was for me the thing. It's like sometimes over time things changes. I would love to do, if I would have a free choice, I would do Grand Theft Auto, because I could do the postal kind of mentality mixed with this kind of car racing violence and crazy gang stuff. I could do a kind of a poster movie with Grand Theft Auto, what would actually reflect, I think, very accurate the game.
hmm hmm
You
And
know, well,
I think it would be a contest of who got the rights first between you and Harmony Korine with his Edgelord production house, because I see both of you as kind of the perfect fit for adapting an IP like GTA into a way that wouldn't just be a repetition of the game itself, but would open up avenues for, I think, satire of the realities of this sort of lifestyle that could be well demonstrated in the film format. And actually, on that topic, I did want to ask you if you have heard of the game Cruelty Squad before.
no.
So Cruelty Squad is very interesting. It's incredibly popular right now. It's an indie game that's primarily developed by one person, that's phenomenally popular, and it effectively is like a parody, or like a dark comedy style game where the protagonist is performing all of these odd jobs for like a dystopian company, and it's incredibly fucking profane. It's off the wall, sort of like mid 2000s humor. And the first thing that I thought when I landed this interview with you was to think, oh my God, like I have to ask Uwe if he has heard of Cruelty Squad. My second question is, would that be something you would be interested in sort of adopting? But to reframe that into a question, which I think is better for you to answer, do you think there is any hope for small indie video game IPs to be picked up by film studios, or is that simply just too hard of a sell to financiers?
I think it needs some money always, right? So you
Hmm.
cannot go $2 million and you shoot a movie like this. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And but on the other hand, I think the market now grows. There are more. We watch Fallout as a TV series. We watched no, The Last of Us. So it's there. The market is there, right? And it's
Mhm.
also able to get something going. Um, but I think also, for example, if Grand Theft Auto would be done by a big studio, it would in the end look more like Fast and the Furious, but
Mhm.
not like Catch 22 meets whatever the Wanderers or the Warriors or something. Like I
I
mean, it,
just I think they would play it too safe to sort of encapsulate the grittiness that happens in the games themselves because they wouldn't want to necessarily produce something like, let's say, like too violent or too sexual that they would be serving to like a mass market global audience. And that's my fear with some of these multiple like billions of dollars. Like Rockstar is a multi-billion-dollar company, and it scares me to think that somebody like Warner Brothers or Universal could get their hands on that IP because I could speak for literally everyone in saying I don't want to see a PG-13 Grand Theft Auto movie. I want to see a Grand Theft Auto movie that pushes the boundaries of an R-rated film. And I'm not sure if studios are willing to take that risk.
no. And I mean, the days where they did that was, for example, when Robert Rodriguez did like Sin City and stuff like this, where
Mm-hmm.
where he had that kind of he could do stuff like this was parallel to Quentin Tarantino doing very brutal kind of independent movies, and I think that times are also slowly dimming away. I mean, Rodriguez, I don't know what he did last. I know he's doing like some stuff, but I don't, but I didn't have him really in front of me, basically, what he did in the last 10 years. So, and I don't know, I think that is the downfall is now, I think is, and you see like all the articles today, how bad was the box office this year so far. And I think they have, as you said before we started the interview, they have a problem. They have the problem that they have basically now lawyers and stockholders determine what gets shot. They
Mm-hmm.
have no more studio bosses who do gutsy decisions and give a shit. They're thinking only about value add to the stock and that they're getting a bigger bonus at the end of the year. And that leads to you have some horror movies because they're not so expensive to make. They working, so that's per year you have like 3, 4 horror movies. They're working big, and then you have like that all that big tempo films. And I mean, I'm so done with Marvel. I'm so done with DC. I just cannot do it anymore. I give a shit about all that Superman and whatever, and they blow it up with 200 million in advertising, so that all of the world streams to the movie theater for one weekend, and then after it drops like the Fantastic Four, the
Yeah.
Superman movie.
Yeah.
After
Yeah.
week 3, they were dead, like
You can
dead.
even see how this sort of mirrors, I think, the effects that private equity has had on the at least the American economy since the 2008 to 2010 financial recession, where the strategy has been to buy up failing businesses. Like, let's say, you're a massive company like Blackstone or Pinnacle, and you buy up the entirety of Joann's Fabrics, and you remove all of the signage on the front to look like something that can easily be taken down and replaced in the case that the land underneath has to be sold. And, 3 to 4 more years of sort of like squeezing as much value out of it as possible. And then it's still unprofitable. And you end up firing off all 700,000 workers and replacing it with, whatever next business in your portfolio can fill that space. And I feel like the same exact trend has hit media, definitely in film. And that has driven a lot of what we've seen. We are watching with these new Marvel films, like especially stuff in the post-COVID era, like sort of an interesting tidbit. I was working on a lot of like sort of like experiential brand marketing stuff, like augmented reality toys to come out with campaigns for music labels, and then a little bit of TV and film back during the tail end of the COVID, the lockdown era of the pandemic, right? One of the things I was working on was actually a campaign for the film Morbius. And I got so stressed out while dealing with an autoimmune disorder that I did not know I had from trying to create this filter that would turn people into the thing that Morbius became, that I ended up actually losing the project because of that, and having to go work at a bank for a year because I couldn't get the filter to morb, so to speak. But on that topic, you see all these movies, and I would say like Marvel had built up for years and years and years this big moment where they created this big bad character in a single movie in Avengers, in Infinity War, where all of the good guys lose at the end of the movie for the first time, because it's predictable. It's every single movie in the Marvel franchise is the good guys have to win at the end, and everything is tied up in a neat little bow, and then they put a little after credit scene to hint at where the plot's going to go, and it's some weird mutation of the comic books to appease the fans of the comic books and get them to show up to the next movie and so on. And then after that era, you have all like this long list of failures. You have like Morbius and Madame Web, which are some of the worst movies ever made, and movies like the Immortals or whatever. None of these I've even bothered to see, since I'm an adult and I'm not watching movies that are made for children. But that leads into my next question, which is that do you feel like the economic stagnation of at least like the West or America has contributed to a culture where people effectively now, because of their lack of economic mobility, can't grow up and are just sort of doomed to consume this sort of media, which, if you think about it, the superhero movies were originally intended to be delivered to families or people showing their kids so they could say, hey, when I was a kid, I had Iron Man, and now I can share that with my kid. But now there is no graduation to the next level, and they're just selling it to the same 35-year-olds that were 15 when Iron Man came out in 2008. I think that my question to you is, do you see that this economic stagnation contributes to this problem, or do you think it's going to create a culture where people get tired of the larger culture, the macro culture, and want to break out by taking more risks? Do you think eventually people will choose with their pocketbook to reject this, like they're trying to break out of the matrix, or do you feel like we're doomed to an endless sort of consumption cycle that puts us in a doom spiral culturally?
I think that's all true what you said, and we look. I cannot say that I really know the outcome, but I
Mhm.
see the tendency that um, the really younger generation, let's say everybody who's right now 18 and under, right? So they lost contact to all this Marvel DC world, basically.
Mhm.
And they go only sometimes because they go with buddies to the movie theater and it's running and then they go in there, but they're not waiting for that movies. When
Mhm.
we grew up, we waited for the new Star Wars. Like there were
Mhm.
like really this kind of, because you had so many other good movies over the year where you really like got a blast out of all the John Grisham movies, whatever, Tom Cruise. So, but then you had like that one or two big event, sci-fi, aliens came or whatever, where like where you were waiting for. Now we have an oversaturation of this. We have 40 movies from franchises a year, coming out left and
Mhm.
right. And every 2 weeks comes one of them, and the people don't want to spend all their money on this bullshit. That's the reason they were. Today also, you go to the movies, you park your car, you get nachos and a drink, and you go with your kids, and there's $100 gone. I
Mhm.
mean, that's the fact, right? So it's like at home now with all the streaming competition, you can watch this at home for 19.99 in 2 months. But then you can have five people sitting there with you and you spend $20 and you don't, you have your own barbecue going, whatever. So you don't have to spend so much money. And I think people, with the stagnation, as you said, we have in Germany the same, that the people getting careful, right? So they don't see the light on the horizon, and they also are not so optimistic that this constant growth, like that a whole idea works anymore. Like this kind of um, I have a big like philosophically problem with it. Like on the one hand, yes, we want economic growth and we want like kind of wealth and we want the luxury, whatever, we want it all. But on the other hand, we also instinctively know that if we keep growing and there are on the planet every year a few 100 million people more, we're toast. I mean, at one point, it's just over,
Mhm.
like where the resources are not enough anymore. And then you have Alex Garland's Civil War, like then you have this kind of, that people are like, okay, fuck this. We need to take Argentina because they have some beef. So, like, I mean, that's the same
And
way.
that sort of thing is literally the birth of this publication and the performance art project that spawned it. Concept Country was born out of that exact phenomenon happening right now because of just sort of this hungry hippos sort of resource grab that's happening with different people that are involved in statecraft now. At the beginning, I mentioned the idea of network states, which is a theory that's posited by Balaji Srinivasan, who is a venture capital investor who, for years, has been touting the idea of essentially capital itself having physical economic exclusion zones, kind of very similar to what was described in Hideo Kojima's Metal Gear series. There's one actually in Honduras called Prospera, which very controversially is, a special economic zone. So they don't adhere to the laws of their host country. It's a small, sort of like resort property sized enclave of like just billionaires and their investors that are attempting to create these like autonomous sort of countries. The only ones that physically exist, being Prospera and Forest City in Singapore, are highly controversial amongst the people that live there because they see them essentially as like a new colony that's landed in their country. So I think my final question to you is, I know that this is a completely fresh concept to you, but do you see any creative avenues for you yourself as UweBoll and your filmmaking community as potentially taking this nascent network state movement, which may become a lot more popular as time goes on and as these sort of like technological republic, or what some would say is techno-fascist principles, become more mainstream? Do you see this as cultural fodder that you could use to, say, produce an action movie about, let's say, some locals that fight back against a highly technological network state that pops up in their backyard? Or do you just see this as another fluke in sort of the sale of capital to try and, like self-determine its own existence through saying these things are real when in 5 years they won't be relevant?
No, I think that is that. I mean, look, I just read a book from a guy from New York also about this preppers, and these people
Mm-hmm.
that buy the bunkers everywhere and they're getting ready for doomsday and they're thinking about how can we protect ourselves that like our bodyguards are not killing us and take the bunker, right? So stuff like this, all this shit exists, and I think that parallel realities, in a way, you have on one hand Zuckerberg with the Meta, who just wants that we space away and are completely somewhere different. And then you have also Peter Thiel, who says like he doesn't believe in democracy, right?
Yeah.
So he thinks the
Yeah, so
elite.
so 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 Teal is one of the primary investors in all of the network state projects, both Prospera as well as Praxis, which is yet to break ground anywhere and is attempting to build a city at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. So all of these people are very tied together. Their goal is to create a post-democratic institution of essentially purely capitalist states that people can pick and choose which one they opt into, essentially. But if you live there, there may now be the ability to opt out. So potentially a very dystopian future. But anyway, interested to hear you continue.
Yeah, I think that that's of course like from like let's say not super rich people. I'm not super rich, right? So I would be maybe not part of of the club.
Yeah,
And
likewise.
you know, yeah. And the thing is that I I'm like let's say after the video game based movies, when you see I did Darfur, I did a Southern Wall Street Rampage, Tunnel Rats about the Vietnam War. Now I did Cities Vigilante with Army Hammer, what is basically about it's an action movie. It's not done, but it's about the European migrant crisis, where a guy is like a justice warrior against all that kind of crazy. Look in Paris or whatever, you know. It's I mean, it's crazy, and I like to do since 10, 12 years more this kind of in your face reality. You know, if I would did Civil War and would do the movie, in a way, I showed it a little with Rampage in the end, where everything goes overboard in Rampage 3. I would said why is that Civil War happening?
Yeah,
And
that
who
was the
is
most
doing it against
that was the
who?
most frustrating thing about that film was
Yes.
that they wanted to make sure that they didn't hit any sort of partisan lane whatsoever. So the
Yeah.
reasons for why exactly Texas and California would join together against the president were left intentionally vague, not in a way that was interesting, but it was just frustrating to the viewer because you never really understood why people were fighting in the first place, yet they all seemed to have the idea of why they were.
Yeah, and I think it was, of course, like visually it was great, but it was then very unrealistic with the photographers in the end. I think it was totally, in a
Yeah,
way,
it felt like
over.
it felt like it was written. I felt like it was written by like journalist photographers to be like, see, and the journalist photographers save the day and are actually the
Yeah,
heroes of this film, which was
yeah.
strange messaging.
Yeah, and I'm more interested in the same what I did in a way with Rampage or whatever is I'm very into like this kind of reality check why violence erupts, why you could push people too far, like I saw on Wall Street. You know, if you get fucked over by Wall Street 2008 and then you lose your wife and you lose your house and you lose it all, why you should not go after them? In a way, the United Healthcare murder situation
Hmm.
is a little similar. I mean, this guy didn't had a negative. He just killed the guy, right? So, but I felt like there were 5,000 people doing suicide after foreclosures and everything over time after the 2008 crisis. And then we had Richard Fuld and everybody walking away with 200 million bucks in severance packages, but they did the damage. You know, and nobody from Merrill Lynch, Goldman Sachs, nobody went to jail and all that stuff. And so, and then I made the film to show in the movie, like, yeah, but maybe you're not safe anymore. So, and so I see myself there more as a early Oliver Stone, you know,
Hmm.
where I want to put the finger in the wound and start pressing it, that people think, fuck, that's not what I want. That's what we should not have, you know.
Hmm.
And I feel like a Peter Thiel, as intelligent he is. It's similar also to people like Zuckerberg or whatever, but like all
Hmm.
the tech gurus. They're very Elon Musk and so on. They're very intelligent, but I think if we're not empathic, if we just would accept that millions of people starve to death or die or whatever, that's where I personally cannot proceed with this.
Hmm.
Right. So that's the thing. I mean, I'm against mass migration from Islamic countries into Europe, you know, but I would also not let people in Africa starve to death.
Hmm.
You know, that's the thing. It's like I would not
So,
like.
you would say your solution would be that we should see the idea of like, let's say the Peter Thiels and the Zuckerbergs absconding with in like incomprehensible levels of wealth, that it would be better put towards making the places that people are fleeing from stable enough to where people don't have to flee from them anymore, thus solving, any semblance of a migrant crisis through raising the floor instead of extending the ceiling.
Yeah, because I think in a way. they cave down. Also Zuckerberg buys then half of Hawaii or something. And
Hmm.
they're always acting like Bill Gates and all these people acting like they give it all away for charity, whatever, right? But they could also say, how much is it per year to feed kids in school in the US? And they pay it.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, then you do a concrete thing. If Trump or other governments say we're not paying the school food anymore,
Yeah, so we actually in New York actually today made school meals free for all students throughout the state. So it's very
that's
interesting that you bring that up. But I agree, and I know you have a background actually in economics and literature. And for the sake of time, I actually think it would be amazing to wrap up here because we have so much that we've covered, and I think that everything that you've contributed was very. I love how we got into like sort of the bigger picture things as opposed to just film and culture. Because as I'm sure you agree with, as somebody who's studied both, pop culture and mass media, including film, is both an affective and a reflective process of culture. You're both mirroring the things that are happening in society, but then you also have the ability to feed back information into it and change things. And I think that where we can both agree on and where we have alignment as a whole is that the current world is currently being pilfered by these massive institutions or sort of like people that have like an overwhelming control over the flow of capital, and you're just removing control from people, and it can be seen in our films and in our culture and how the younger generation believes that there's like a level of hopelessness because they don't feel like they're in charge of their own future anymore. So hopefully with more UweBolls and more citizen vigilante type works out in the world, we can show people that even if something like Hollywood claims it's bad, that the idea of choosing your own future and saying, no, I'm not going to do it this way is more valuable than making something that they say is high quality or love. I think almost we're at a point where there's a level of this individual anarchism, which is going to be important for people's media in the future. And the younger generation already does this when they endlessly copy and disrespect intellectual property for their own memes. They have no respect for the system because the system has basically either taken away things it used to give them or gives them what they feel like is nothing. But again, I do want to thank you very
you have
much.
to look at YouTube, right? At YouTube, I think my movies had 150 million views where other people pocketed the money and
Mhm.
just putting my movies up. And then you shut them down, you file it, whatever, they shut it down. But YouTube keeps the money and they keep the money.
Yeah.
And they never like give the money then to you what the other guys should get or what they took off the advertising. And so it's kind of no streamer would get away with it. And YouTube is the biggest streamer on earth, but they completely don't care about copyright
Mhm.
issues. They flag something here or there, but it's a senseless, like a Don Quixote war, where you try to like put your stuff up on your channel, whatever, and that you get the money, but then 100 other people do it also out. And then they say they have the rights, right? And then you
Yeah.
say to YouTube, by the way, I have the rights. I'm the filmmaker. Just Google the fuck, right? So, and then, like there
Yeah.
are with Google. So, and then, but it takes time where the other guys pocket the money and stuff like this. That's a different problem, different subject matter. But that's the overall problem with the movie industry is now if the streamers don't pay your bills, you're fucked
Mhm.
basically, right?
Yeah.
Because then you only make money if you have a loyal audience or an audience who jump on something because it's not on Netflix because they say I buy this, I pay for it, like on TVOD and Amazon and so on. And but for this, you need enormous amounts of capital to advertise it. No movie will be a hit because you just put it online. So you need a real strategy why millions of people should watch this now and actually pay for it. So
Mhm.
that's a different, like my problem. What I always do. I'm lucky that I made so many movies, so I have like a constant kind of a revenue stream, even if it's smaller. But it's enough for me that I can say, okay, I'm doing now a film, not too expensive, but I can do it out of my library money, basically,
Mhm.
what I do. So, Yeah, that was great. I mean, if that what you now taped,
Mhm.
if you want to send me a download link, I could also put it on my YouTube channel in the end after the article comes out and link it with the article if you
That
want.
that would be no, that would be fantastic. Let me talk to the other members about it. I'm sure they'll
Yeah,
have no problem with it. But
yeah.
this was incredible. This was probably I've been on a handful of podcasts either as a guest or as a co-host or like a an expert on some software things in a different area. But this was by far, I think, my most favorite one I've ever done. And I'm not just saying that to you. This was amazing.
And then
Everybody's
we'll
going
be
to be
in New
pumped to
York,
hear
right?
what you talked about.
Yeah. So I will be in New York the next 4 weeks
Mhm.
shooting. And let's email. Maybe I shoot it most in Brooklyn. So
Okay.
maybe you come to the set one day and have a coffee on
No,
set or something.
absolutely. I'm actually over in Manhattan. I'm a short train ride away. I'd love to.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. I will email you or you email me, and then like we start shooting middle of next week, and then you can come in whenever you want.
Awesome. Is this for Citizen Vigilante or for a different project?
No, that's a different. But I tell you in New York what it is when we
Perfect.
meet.
Awesome.
Because
We're all
we
recorded
prepared
and
a press release
yeah.
about it, and it's not out now, so I don't want to
Yeah.
get it out.
No worries.
Okay.
Everything you tell me was is totally confidential. But yeah,